Hi, I'm Meg Major with Winsight Grocery Business. Welcome to Grocery COVID-19 Live. Joining me today is John Springer, our executive editor, Jennifer Straley, our senior editor, and the supermarket guru himself, Phil Lempert. Phil, how are you?
Great. And this new series is going to be designed to offer grocery, convenience store, food service operators up to the minute news. Meg, we're in unprecedented times and uncharted waters sparked by COVID 19. And all eyes, frankly, are on us, on the grocery business, from the farm to the table, to those empty shelves that everybody has questions on. And basically, grocery is emerging as a leader and a pillar of resources and support for all of our neighbors. Everybody who has never really thought about food, everybody is focused on food. So the editors of Winsight Grocery Business and me, Phil Lempert, have teamed up for Grocery COVID-19 Facebook Live series that will break down the latest developments unfolding on the front lines in our U.S. grocery stores and elsewhere. We will also be broadcasting on YouTube. We'll be broadcasting on Winsight Grocery Business Facebook page and website, and the same thing on Supermarket Guru. In today's first segment, we're going to discuss a few of the hottest trends that are trending pertaining to the coronavirus and grocery stores. First up, and Meg, I'm going to throw this to you. How is COVID-19 affecting shopping behaviors?
Wow, Phil, where do we begin? So, for the past 2 weeks, we have seen unprecedented volume running through our stores. And before we begin, I would like to throw a massive shout out to our frontline teams in every grocery store, in every retail food outlet in America. The job that their managers to every department head has done, as well as all the frontline teams, we cannot say thank you enough. And with that, the changes that have gone on in the past 2 weeks, as we said, have been unlike anything any of us have ever reported on. We've been working around the clock to keep our readers up to date on these things, beginning with the untold volume of shoppers panic buying. The surge of shoppers has just put the biggest challenges on our frontline teams we've ever seen. John could tell us a little bit more about some of the store tours that he's seen as well. John, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. We've seen all kinds of crazy volumes at supermarkets. Really from maybe 3 weeks ago, I guess, when it first started to show up, where Steven Spinner, the CEO at United Natural Foods, a big distributor, was talking, likened it to the volume demand at Thanksgiving, only without having the months and months that they normally take to prepare for that. So the extra trucks, the extra supply, everything else that goes in there. And I think there was, kind of a combination of factors. There are a lot of uncertainty about the condition and the disease and what's going on with that. There were pictures of empty shelves, which I think kind of perpetuated a kind of these crazy runs on things like toilet paper and other things. And so that really kind of caught everybody, from the supply chain down to every store, kind of unprepared for the great volume that they saw in the first couple of days. And now we're seeing them working through that to a large extent. Messages, in the cities like I am in New York, people are inside. I'm at home. I think people are being much more judicious about going to the stores. And although online is quite congested still, people are getting used to the idea that they've got to stay away from one another or social distance and buy what they need and not necessarily hoard it all for the future.
So John, let me go back to the store level for a second.
Yeah.
So what we're starting to see, and we're here in Los Angeles, I'm sure you're seeing the same thing in New York, is just about every retailer either running TV commercials or e-blasts saying, "We want to hire you." Instacart has said they want to hire another 300,000 people. We've had relatively low unemployment. We have a labor shortage. We have truck drivers who, frankly, are retiring, so we don't have enough trucks. We have farm labor situations where, frankly, for the undocumented farm workers, if they get sick, they're still going to work. They're not getting paid if they don't go to work. What do we do long term about this labor? You mentioned Thanksgiving, Christmas. Obviously, these retailers have geared up for holidays like that or Super Bowl. They got blindsided by this. How do we prevent this from happening in the future when just don't have enough people?
There- Phil, there are so many things that have to be thought through, I think, as a result of this. And I think the industry is going to learn quite a bit, right? So, we can see this accelerating things like self-driving vehicles for distribution, things that are just beginning now in the industry, like uh, micro fulfillment centers using robots to pick the orders for outgoing e-commerce orders. We can see that thing really accelerating once we get through this. And they say, next time we've got an issue like this, we'll be at least a little bit better prepared for it. But I don't know if anybody knows that you could predict any kind of situation like this. It's really unprecedented in the industry.
And
Hey,
I think it's
Phil, may I jump in? And I'm going to
sure.
read you a quick stat from those who are looking for workers right now. Instacart 300,000, Walmart 150,000, Amazon 100,000, Dollar General 50,000, CVS 50,000, Albertsons 30,000, and on and on. Where are all these workers going to come from?
Well, I'm going to ask Jen that. Jen is also in the West.
Mhm.
So, Jen, when you look at everything that's going on, where we're seeing special hours, for example, for seniors, and I know Meg and I have a very similar opinion of that we'll talk about. All these other things that are happening, where a lot of stores, including Walmart, Hy-Vee, and more, are announcing that now they're installing, plexiglass shields
Sure.
to separate the customer from them. Where's again, to Meg's point, where's the people coming from? Where's the money coming from for all this? Are we going to see higher grocery prices down the road as a result of this?
I think we very may well see that, because the unemployment issue, though, unemployment is now skyrocketing. I mean, there's some that are saying it's like 30% unemployment rate now. And in Denver, where we have an 8-week now ban on being able to work in restaurants, bars, hair salons, nails, all of it, it's all shut down. And that it will not, reopen before May 11th. So we have a lot of people who are unemployed right now. And in fact, the Colorado Unemployment Office received 180,000 requests for benefits in last week alone. So I don't know. I mean, there may be some, I think that there's a workforce out there that's been displaced, that, and a lot of people who are hiring temporary positions. Bezos said, Amazon wants to hire 100,000 people. Restaurant bar workers, come to us. We'll take care of you.
But Jen, aren't they going to have to ramp up? I mean, you can't take somebody who works at a restaurant
Sure.
as a waiter and put them in an Amazon warehouse and have them fulfill. I mean, what's and love to get all three of your opinions on this. What are we going to do in this period of time? Sure, we can hire them, but aren't they going to require some training here?
Bill, that's exactly the point I was going to mention too, is at the pace and the rapidity that our frontline teams and warehousemen and truckers and distribution teams are working at, are they really going to have time to train all of these people? Training is essential to being proficient and efficient. Number two, I've sensed in just anecdotal friend input that have been displaced, people are a little bit uncomfortable stepping into a frontline retail job because of fear of catching coronavirus. So
And
it's,
also from a
go
food
ahead.
safety standpoint, I mean, we again, you just can't take somebody who is in a restaurant, put them behind a deli because it's different food safety techniques. I want to talk about senior hours. Senior hours are making tons of headlines. And Meg, I know what your opinion is, so I'm going to let you comment first, and then John and Jen add your comments. So, Meg.
So the senior hours have been a rolling wave of announcements that began roughly a week or so ago, where it began with some calls on social media, and a few retailers quickly stepped up while a few others bristled. But as you and I talked about it, Phil, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and 8 a.m. are really difficult for elderly and senior citizens to wake up and hit the ground running at that time of day. Number two, they oftentimes have limited means of transportation, and especially transportation is difficult to come by at that hour. But you can see that that window of time works well because that's when the stores are most clean and
And
sanitized.
stocked.
But it really is a catch-22 as well. But go right ahead and share your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, John, in New York City, everybody's used to delivery. It's a 24-hour city. Are we seeing senior hours, in New York?
Yeah, the retailers are many of the retailers anyway have been rolling it out. You know, there was an interesting comment the other day from the chief operating officer at Sprouts Farmers Markets, who said that we hadn't made a decision on this yet because what they'd seen at other retailers that had done it, was that there were gatherings of senior citizens waiting out in front of the stores before they opened, and that was creating issues with social distancing concerns and everything. The same thing happened to me. I visited an Aldi store here in Queens, New York, last week, and they were limiting the number of people in the store at a time. I was like, that's great for Aldi. Let's keep their employees safe. Let's keep the shoppers in there safe. But for the rest of us waiting outside, that was a really unnerving few moments. And so there's concerns. I saw a comment on social media just recently from a friend of mine in Ohio who said that the Trader Joe's in her town had taken to putting tape on the floor 6 feet away, outside the store because they're only letting so many in, and there's got to be so many outside.
So, John, I have two questions for you. Number one, from what I understand, Aldi has been fully stocked. They're one of the retailers who are not having a lot of empty shelves. Is that what you found as well?
Well, it was a mix. I'd gone in there looking for olive oil, and they definitely had no olive oil. So, I had to come home with sesame oil. But other than that, the stores were, it was well shopped. It's not hard to find an Aldi that looks well shopped, particularly late in the day when I was there. But I guess what they're doing is emphasizing the products that people buy the most, which they already stock, right, and then drilling down on that and making sure they've got the right selection of that stuff.
And
So
John, my second question is, how did you get into the senior hours at Aldi? Did you have
It wasn't senior hours, no.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just wanted to be
Late
clear.
in the day.
So Jen, what are you seeing in Denver as it relates to certain services like senior hours? John brings up a real good point that they have to put tape on the outside. I know that Woolworths and Kohl's in the UK and some stores in Europe have actually now printed up circles, about 12-inch circles, and they're putting those down every 6 feet, to stack people. What are you seeing in
Mhm.
Denver?
I think the lines outside, as retailers are limiting the number of people, that the retailers who are choosing to do that, whether it's Trader Joe's or Costco, it's creating these huge lines that are wrapping around the building. So, this weekend I thought, well, I'll hit Costco Saturday morning. Maybe now that everyone's working from home,
Yeah.
there will be so many people down the weekend. The line was wrapped around the building, and people weren't really practicing social distancing.
Right.
And then a family friend waited in that line yesterday outside of Costco, was able to get in, and once inside the store, they had limited the number of people inside the store to the point where like the store was empty of people, like there was no one shopping in the store, you know. So it seems like we need to find a balance of protecting people with social distancing inside the store, but we got to think about those lines outside the store too. So it's good to hear that Trader Joe's is implementing something there, to the point where in Denver yesterday, the mayor of Denver said that we were going to go on more of a lockdown. So more things were closing. Only essential buildings are going to, you know, businesses would stay open. If you were going out for groceries, medicine, or medical supplies, you were allowed to leave your house. Otherwise, no. And he said that liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries would also be closing. Well, that caused an immediate rush of lines as everyone went out to load up on booze and weed to get through the coronavirus. He had to come back on and say, actually, my bad, liquor stores and dispensaries will stay open provided they can create an appropriate social distancing situation.
And Phil, let me jump in and say
Sure.
too, here in Pennsylvania, the wine and spirits stores, which are state owned,
Right.
have also been closed for the past week. So thankfully, there's been the passage of beer and wine sales in food stores in PA about 5 years ago. So that's at least been able to supply those in need. But same here. A lot of the services, essential services only. Phil, I have a question for you. Do you think that the retailers that have installed the sneeze guards at the front end and taken other measures, do you suspect that they will remain in place after this COVID-19 quiets down?
Absolutely, at least in the case of Walmart, I believe that it will, because I also don't see this as being a temporary situation. And I'm going to be a little controversial here. The problem that we've got is we're in the middle of a bell curve. So we have all these people out there waiting in line, stocking up. To John's point, buying 100 rolls of toilet paper. I'm not sure, how long it's going to take them to use that. But let's not forget that we get a lot of food from China, poultry, seafood, processed mushrooms, garlic, a lot of produce for food service. So a lot of food from there. And also now with this battle that's taking place with Airbus and Boeing, and that, our government has now put tariffs on foods and wines from, even though I have no idea what that has to do with airplanes, tariffs on alcohol, on wine, on cheeses, and so on. What I think we're going to see is everybody's going to fill up their pantry. Hopefully COVID-19 goes away really soon. But then all these other factories around the world that are closed, that are processing food, have to get back up to speed. So I think we are going to see more shortages. I think we are going to see higher prices in certain products. So I think that this is just phase one.
Yeah, you could be right about that. I mean, the one thought that might counter that is the fact that you've got all this restaurant food that's not being eaten in restaurants, and that's got to go somewhere. So, if it's half the fresh food and the meat and what have you in the world, that's got to go to restaurant. That's going to be causing some, oversupply, which usually accompanies lower prices. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I think there's so much going on here. You got to kind of work through it all. I think longer term, you're looking at the potential of a long, recession in the U.S. And you mentioned we're in a curve. We're really at the beginning of the curve, unfortunately. And we'll see how that all works out. But I think that's going to put pressure on what people are going to be buying, going forward. Maybe they're not going to have the appetite for some of the products that they were buying only a few weeks ago in a few months.
And also, I understand in New York, and it could be elsewhere, it could be in Pennsylvania, Meg, Jen in Denver. What we're starting to see is a lot of the food service wholesale distributors now opening up to consumers. Almost, it brings me back to the days of Jetro cash and carry, if you would, 30 years ago, where that's happening. Are you seeing that happen as well?
Yes.
Sorry, Meg. Baldor, the specialty food
Yep.
distributor in New York, is doing their own e-commerce business, delivering stuff to your door. These are in restaurant quantities, so it's a large. You've got a big freezer. You can buy a lot of USDA prime steaks. Put them in there. So we're seeing plenty of that here.
So
Oddly, Phil, that here's another kink on that, another take on that. The Catholic churches during Lent in Pennsylvania, as well as around the country, have the big fish fries, which are a big part of their fundraising. They're also selling their fish wholesale to the public because all the fish fries have been canceled too. So think about the littlest thing from a community-based fundraising thing that churches and groups rely on are done.
Yeah,
Really.
and you look at the amount of conventions, certainly food conventions, to South by Southwest, to Coachella. I mean, multi-million dollar operations that are just being canceled, and that's got to have a huge effect on the economy. And the last question before we go, and then I'm going to talk about what we're going to be talking about tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And we're going to continue this series for as long as we need to keep you informed. And also, if you've got any questions, just in the chat box, right in Facebook, type the question. If it's for one person in particular, put their name in front of it, or we'll just figure out, who gets that. But I guess my last question to all of you is, if you had to think of one thing, the one change that's going to happen as a result of this, whether we're at the beginning of the curve, middle of the curve, the end of the curve, tariffs, factories, not being open, and so on. What's that one change that is keeping you up at night? And Jen, why don't we start with you?
Oh, so many things to keep me up at night. This is just where none of us have ever experienced a time like this in our lives. I'm fighting, the feelings of just being overwhelmed together. I talked with Tom Stencil, the president and CEO of United Fresh, last week, and he painted a very grave picture of what our food service situation looks like. With, as John said, half of our food supply has nowhere to go if we can't link grocery with the food service business. So I think that's a place to start. If I felt like there was stronger collaboration there, I might get a few more minutes of sleep.
Yeah, I was talking to a farmer earlier today, who says that because of the situation, he basically has no farm workers, and his crops, and he had a strawberry crop, and that's coming up now, is just sitting in the field and rotting. He's not going to be able to sell it because he doesn't have any workers. John, what's keeping you up at night?
I don't know if it's keeping me up at night, but I'm interested in how the business is going to change as a result of getting through this. And the first thing I thought of when you asked that question was, the trends that we're seeing toward automation and e-commerce that have been kind of slowly building are really going to accelerate as we go forward. And I think that's going to change, and that's going to be a big change as a result of this.
And I also think that what we've noticed, even though people, have been saying, oh, home delivery is going to go up to 10% and so on, this system is fragile. It's great that we've got all these delivery services, but what this has proven is we can't handle the volume. We really can't. So to your point about automation and new VC money coming into that. And Meg, what's keeping you up at night?
I think what keeps me up at night is where this thing goes the next day. Each day, if the bigger strain that's on our frontline teams in the grocery stores and warehouses and distribution centers and drivers, the panic buying persists. I have not seen much of a let up. The retailers I've spoken with, our mutual friend Phil, Lisa Sedler, last night, I spoke with Lisa. She's still seeing a lot of panic buying in her neighborhoods and stores, but they're really going out of their way at Green Zebra to monitor store conditions continuously and making sure. I'm seeing a lot of self-service coffee service even going away. So while the salad bars have been ripped out and soup bars and so forth, we're seeing something change every day that's putting, to me, a little bit more labor on those already beaten down store teams, which I, again, cannot thank enough. But as each new day comes, there's going to continue to be, I think, shortages and inadequate supplies of so many things. So just the supply and demand shifts, I'm not seeing a big let up.
Yeah, and what's keeping me up at night is money. I don't know where all this money is going to come from. We're very fortunate in this country. We have the cheapest food supply in the world. I think that's going to change as a result of all the kinds of things that we're talking about. And what we're going to talk about over the next few days is how the grocery industry is stepping up to reward frontline employees. We touched a little bit about that. What about promotions and discounts? We're seeing retailers like Hy-Vee get rid of their store circulars. Are store circulars gone? Are they ever coming back? Obviously, the online ordering, pickup, and delivery. How are they going to solve this issue? Because today, if I want to order on Instacart, it's going to take me 4 days to get my order, and I used to be able to get it in an hour. What about the changes to the SNAP program, to the WIC program? How is that going to affect everything? And certainly the implications, as Jen talked about, talking to Tom Stenzel, on the fresh produce supply chain. If there's no workers, hey, we don't have produce. Does that accelerate having more indoor farming operations like Bowery Farms opening up throughout the country and money going there? Lots of changes to talk about. We want your questions, and join us for our next segment of Grocery COVID-19 right here on Facebook Live. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks.
Thanks.